I'm Michael Pranay-Isbell, and I'm the Manager for Emerging Technologies for Condé Nast. Today I want to take a look at notes I made for two classes from WWDC 2012 about introducing collection views and advanced collection views. I'm using a tool here called Tinderbox by a company called Escape. Tinderbox is a unique tool written as a note. It's a note taker written by Mark Bernstein, and it's written solely by him with a little help here and there, I think, but pretty much solely by him, invented by him. And it's what he calls artisanal software. Highly recommended. It's famous for having a steep learning curve, but I think that's actually a misapprehension for how it works. It's actually extremely simple to use. And let's just get started. So, session 205, introducing collection views. I'm going to go in and take a look and see what I did here and just talk my way through it. So there were two gentlemen who were engineers speaking. There was Oliver Gutnicht and there was Luke Heisterman. They're both iOS app and framework engineers. And they're going to talk about collection views, which are introduced in the 2012 sessions. And they're a response to the need for something better than UI table view grids and something somewhat analogous to NS collection views in Mac OS X, but not an exact match. It says, in fact, here they are not an equivalent of NS collection view, and they're not a replacement for UI table view. You can do grids with them. They are data source based and they are delegate based. And let's see here, we're going to talk about flow layout, and we're talking about the view architecture, the data model, and interaction, the core concepts, and how to customize flow layout. So let's just keep going through that. Where do we go from here? Let's see, the concepts. So we really have three kinds of things besides the collection view itself. We have the cells, we have supplementary views, and we have decoration views. The cells are analogous to the cells in a UI table view, and they are data driven. And you'll recognize some of the same methods for UI table view that you saw in UI collection view. Supplementary views are metadata views. They apply to an entire section, and like cells, they are data-driven. Decoration views, by contrast, belong to the layout, not to the collection view. I happen to remember that. Good for me. And so now that we know that, so they're data-driven. So how do you provide content to them? You create a UI collection view data source, and it's a protocol that returns methods, number of sections, number of cells, and there's a cell and supplementary view setup as well. You recognize these two from UI table view grid. If we go over here, we'll see UI collection view implements the UI collection view data source protocol. And we'll also see that UI collection view is a subclass of UI scroll view. And here where I have blue, those are the methods. So there's a number of sections in collection view. If there's no implementation, it assumes there's one section. There's a collection view cell for item and index path, again very similar to the UI table view method, the same name. And I just want to make a note, cells that are scrolled off screen are moved into a reuse queue. So when you're dequeuing, that's where you're dequeuing from, right? This is new. You can just instead of doing all the checking to see if dequeue of a cell returns nil and then responding to that, you don't have to do that. You just have to register a class, usually in an init or viewDidLoad for the collection view. and you also have to do it for the supplementary view class, but register the class, and then all you have to do is DQ, and that is guaranteed to return a cell. It'll either return one off the queue if there is one available, or it will return a new cell if there isn't one available. Also, they've rewritten UITableView so that that's the way that works now, too. So, goodness all the way around, right? And let's see, we don't need to go there. So that's how you get data in through the data source. And then the question is, how do you interact with the content? And there's a UICollectionView delegate, and it helps you do a few things. It helps you with selection and highlights, helps you with menu actions, helps you control the cell highlight, and helps you control the cell selection. The cell is actually a layered cell. So your collection view cell is layered like this. You have the actual cell. Then you have on top of it the background view, right? That's right. And I could remember if I hesitated long enough. And on top of that, you have the background when selected view. Whoops. And on top of that, you have the content view of the cell. And that's where you should actually be putting your data for display to the user. The background selected and background views are exactly what they say. The background is the normal background view. When you select the cell, that the background selected view appears in the Z order above it. So it goes from transparent to visible. Let's talk a little bit about the selection highlight flow. First, you ask if the item should be highlighted. So the user taps the cell. First, you ask if the item should be highlighted with this method. Should highlight item and index path. It's a new method. If we say no, then we completely bypass the selection process and nothing happens. If highlighted equals yes, so if we start out with these two, highlighted equals false, selected equals false. So if highlighted equals yes, we turn highlighted to true. We then note, we run the method did highlight item at an index path, so it gives you a chance to respond to that. Then it asks if you should select the item at the index path. No, I didn't get a clear feeling from the slides about what would happen, but I guess it's just not selected. And if yes, we say we then unhighlight the cell and select it and say did select, which means highlight is turned false and selected equals true. And that is the state you are in if you have selected a cell. That's your final state. If you unselect, you have your unselect flows. You're starting out with selected equals true and highlighted equals false. You ask, should deselect item? So say you tap it again. Should deselect item index path? If you say yes, just say did select item, and it will turn selected equals false and highlighted equals false, right? See what's happening over here. So much information, right? Wow. So where do we stop before? I think we were over here, right? So let's keep going over here. So visual content on screen, cells, the UI collection view cell. We know you can configure background views in a selected background, right? View, and let's see what that says. A cell is not the content business. It has no styles defined, unlike the UI table view. but it does track selection and highlight, and it walks the entire subview tree for the cell. So any UI kit controls in the cell view get selected and highlighted for free. And you can configure background views in a selected background view, as I showed you before. So that's good. Go over to the layout here. So we're going to look at, there are two layouts. There's collection view layout and UI collection view flow layout, which is the more commonly used one. It's easy to do simple things. It's basically a line break. You know, show a row, break on a line type layout. UI collection view layout is for programming more customized layouts. UI collection view layout attributes is sort of, it's where it's the most important class next to the actual collection view itself, because it contains the descriptions of the cells, and those values are what are passed around between the layout and the views in order to set the properties on the cells, including size, position, opacity, z-index, transform. So those are key. You can also subclass and build custom UI collection view layout attributes. And let's just jump down here. So what is flow layout? Grid, sure, it's and Luke notes that it is the degenerate case. The grids are and tables are the degenerate case of the flow layout, because in other words, it's the simplest. But you could be grouping things that are not of like size, somewhat like a text system. That means there's some customization involved, right? And we note here some of the things you can alter are custom item size. You can be configured locally on the collection view or per item, right? So you can set a property on the collection view, which will set your item sizes, or you can do it per item, right? Another way of thinking about item size, however, is to simply specify the spacing between items. So you can have a minimum in inter-item spacing and actual inter-item spacing. What that means is that it will say you specify 4 points as the minimum inter-item spacing. You're guaranteed it will always be 4 points at least, but it may be 8 points, and that would be the actual inter-item spacing. And so it's possibly expanded by the framework, right? Line spacing is similar. There's minimum line spacing and actual line spacing. In this case, all items are the same height. In this case, the framework might do an expansion, just like before. And here are the methods that set those. And here are the line spacing methods, right? And footers are set somewhat the same way. And once again, you can set them globally per item. Headers and footers, they're just supplementary views. So you have to register and dequeue them. Same dance you do with cells. And here are the constants that you use to pick whether it's a section or a header. You set that on the supplementary view. Sizing changes are based on scroll direction. What that means is that you specify both width and height, but it's only going to use one based on the scroll direction. So if you turn it, you know, portrait size, it's going to be using width. If you turn it landscape size, it's going to be using height, or vice versa. It's one of those two. Let's go back over here. Let's get a view of the whole thing so you can see. This is just the first class, right? This is what it looked like. This was the analysis of the first talk on UI collection views. So let's go back in. I think we've covered through here pretty good. UI collection view delegate. That's the selection flow. Down here we've covered section insets and scroll direction. We didn't get to those. Section insets are kind of interesting. It's a box surrounding the content, so you can shrink the box with the inset. It's a way to get one column line. So if you have a grid that has 3 lines, well, how do you make it do 1 line? The answer is you shrink the size of the box. The flow layout is trying to squeeze as many cells as it can into the box. So if there's space, it'll squeeze 3 rows in. So the answer to making it 1 row is simply reduce the size of the box. It's a very elegant solution. Scroll direction defines the base behavior of flow layout, controls the main dimension for headers and footers, so it's very important in that regard. Here we go. Let's see. Right, and great. It's very interesting going through this again after having just made it yesterday, because as I'm also reading Mark Bernstein's book, The Tinderbox Way, and as he points out, notes, which is what this system excels at, are intended to sort of store private thoughts. So, it's not exactly like mind mapping, and it's not exactly like making an outline, although there is an outline view right over here. And then some of these even have timeline views for the books I'm reading. Anyway, this was UICollectionView in the diagram I made, and I'm going to post it and a copy of the diagram up to Google. Thanks for watching.